Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette. We're so glad you're with us today to stay curious. We've got a wonderful show for you put together today. We've got 3 astronaut birthdays. Hint to one of them took this iconic photograph behind us here on our green screen, the first Earthrise ever witnessed by human eyes. We got 2 other birthdays beside that mystery astronaut. And we are going to have Starlink in the news as the Orlando Fox News station, Channel 35, was in the house today interviewing me about the Starlink satellites degrading astronomical observing for backyard astronomers as well as serious astronomers. The Federal Trade Commission is looking into this, or the Federal Communication Commission, I think, is looking into that. And thank you, Esther Bauer, for coming here in our museum and wanting to get some facts from an amateur astronomer like myself. And then finally, we've got a really exclusive from our good friend Mark Usciak. Mark is headed back to his hometown of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, after spending a few days in Houston area, where he got to talk to or take pictures of Frank Rubio come back. He was at that press conference. Then he was at an air show. And then the eclipse, of course, and Mark Usciak got some great annular eclipse photos that we showed you and on our Facebook page. And then Mark ended his trip by going by the Starship rocket ship factory out there in Boca Chica. And there was a an X today posted that said Starship fully stacked and the team ready for launch rehearsals and dazzling photos are here. So Mark was right there at the right time as Elon Musk is ready to launch his mighty Starship again for the second time. Just wait on the FAA approval, whoever approves that. And Federal Aviation Association, I believe, has their hand in that. All kinds of people, wildlife management. So that's our show today, to talk about those things to help you stay curious. There we got the iconic image there. Let's go backwards there. Little Marty, we're not racked up right. Hold on. Okay, we're not at the beginning. There we are. That's the end. There's the beginning about our Galaxy of Giving. Fundraising begins November 1st. Marty had a good idea going on while we were talking and looking around here. He says, my hair's on fire there, and this old gray-haired man here, my hair does seem to have a little action going on it there. So Marty thinks we ought to have a contest of giving to what color should my hair be dyed to prohibit this craziness going on there. And my beard, too. So, Marty, that's some forward thinking there. We'll see what Dave Stange thinks about that. As we're going to launch a good Galaxy of Giving campaign November 1st, we will have some things to reward you for your giving, and look forward to that. Well, that's going backwards, because we're going to talk about, is this going to happen or not? Think about that as we go backwards, this way, that way. There we go. Guest tomorrow, the one and only Mr. Jay Honeycutt, former Kennedy Space Center director, a man very much behind the scenes in organizing our space shuttle era into its successful mode after the first 25 launches in the tragedy of Challenger. Look forward to Jay Honeycutt talking about his early days. He was an Apollo Sims guy, one of those evil guys trying to crash the lunar module on the surface, and the astronauts trying to overcome any kinds of anomalies that they're thrown at. Looking forward to having Mr. Honeycutt here. Then we got Jaylene Spears here. Will be Thursday. She was the first female quality control inspector, and she's got a great story. Always been involved with airplanes and space stuff. Grew up in Akron, Ohio. And then looking forward to Jelaine here, and very excited to have her on as we are about showcasing any woman in the space business. And Monday, the one and only Nick Thomas, the astronaut wrangler, he is going to be talking about Wally Schirra in some of the tales, as he was around Wally quite a bit. Nick, of course, is the lead educator at the Kennedy Visitors Complex, and I call him astronaut wrangler because he He handles all of the astronauts at their wonderful astronaut encounter program that we talk about a lot, as Marty and I and a lot of us here at the museum enjoy visiting our astronauts and the stories they tell. Well, happy birthday! And we got a belated happy birthday, Marty. To this is one of the surfer boys that hung 10 actually on a spacewalk, that being Mr. Jim Newman. Dr. James Hansen Jim Newman was born October 16, 1956. He was born in the Pacific Islands, that is now called the Federated States of Micronesia, but he considers Pacific Grove, California, to be his hometown. This spacewalker has 43 days in space and 43 hours on his various spacewalks. That's about 6 spacewalks. It's about 7. He worked on, in fact, Jim talked about this at the Space Center. He loves talking about mating Unity and Zarya modules, the first sections of the International Space Station in December 1988. And he was on the Force Service mission of the Space of Hubble Telescope, STS-109. And after he got out of NASA active astronaut, he became the head of human spaceflight program in Russia from 202 to 206. And that's, I think he followed Mike Baker out doing that. So happy birthday to you, belated 67-year-old Jim Newman. We'll look forward to seeing him out again at the Space Center. And happy 90th birthday to Apollo 8 moon voyager Bill Anders, born in British Hong Kong on October 17th, 1933, and also born on October 17th in 1956 is Mae Jemison, born in Decatur, Alabama. Let's talk about Mae here for a moment. Her one and only mission was STS-47, the Japanese module, in 1992. She founded her own technological research company after leaving NASA. Like I said, born in Decatur, Alabama. She has a medical degree from Cornell. She's written several children's books. Here she is training for her mission in 1992. She wrote several children's books and is involved with DARPA, a funding project for underprivileged people. She has been on an episode of Star Trek several times. The Next Generation, one of her passions. So hope Mae Jemison is enjoying her 67th birthday, born in Decatur, Alabama. Another Alabama astronaut that comes to mind is Kathy Thornton. And there is Mr. Bill Anders. We want to talk about him a little bit because he was the lunar module pilot for Apollo 8, but they didn't have a lunar module on board. This was the very bold stroke of genius, really, to orbit the moon and not land on it in December 1968, which basically won the moon race with Russia. It showed that we had the Saturn V rocket could get us to the moon, and then Apollo 9 checked out that lunar module in Earth orbit, then Apollo 10 sent it in April to orbit the moon with both lunar module and command module, and of course the historic landing in July 69. But this paved the way, and Bill Anders was part of it. In fact, there he is suiting up. He is also, his other crewmates survived with him. Bill is legendary to have taken one of the most iconic photographs in the history of mankind, Earthrise. I think this picture in 1968, and then the visor shot, we call it a Buzz Aldrin on the moon with Neil Armstrong and the LEM reflected in the visor, are two of the most iconic images that will live forever as long as mankind is on Earth. And Bill Anders takes claim to this. There are a couple other shots, maybe by one of his other crewmates. Here's his crewmates there. That's happy Frank Borman to the left, and Jim Lovell on the right. There's Anders in the middle. Jim and Frank are 95 years old, folks, and Bill Anders is a lot younger, 90 years old there. So love to get those guys together one day. They orbited the moon together on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, 1968. I will never forget that as a teenager, witnessing that on TV. very moving in my life, that I would always be crazy about the moon. Anders established the foundation of a philanthropic organization for educational and environmental issues. He, like Mae Jemison, only flew once in space, and he felt like he was not going to be a lunar module pilot and land on the moon, though he's at Apollo 8, but there must have been some writing on the wall that he wasn't going to get another mission. So, love to meet him, Marty. Never have interacted with Bill Anders, but hope to see him at Kennedy Space Center at an event soon. This is, again, a beautiful Earthrise taken by our lunar orbiter, all right, 1968. And then there's a beautiful rendition of Earthrise by our friend Chris Calley, one of his masterpieces out there, Chris. Love the detail in the lunar surface there. He's got a few Easter eggs, they call them, of footprints among those hills there. And of course, they'd be gigantic footprints if they were real. But thank you, Chris Calley, for supporting our American Space Museum with your world-recognized art. And this is one of his latest pieces called Earthrise by Chris Calley. Well, there is Carlton Bailey's shot of another Starlink mission being launched with a bunch of Starlink satellites. Those are, of course, the communication system that SpaceX and billionaire Elon Musk is building, a much needed system to get internet, phone service, and computer service to about a third of the world that really can't get it because they're really out there in the boonies, so to speak. But I understand you can't even walk out within an hour of SpaceX headquarters in Spokane, Washington area, wherever it is, Olympia, Washington, something like that. And you can't get cell service in the mountains there in the Northwest. So much needed, but there's a story that the FCC is looking at the license that they've given for 30,000 of these Starlink satellites, and that's why Esther Bauer, reporter for Fox Orlando Channel 35, was in the museum today to talk to me as president of the Brevard Astronomical Society and representing this museum to what we thought about that. So I'll tell you what we think about it. Here is a painting of the Starlink satellites. First thing is, they never asked amateur astronomers, or professional astronomers more importantly, about the light that was going to reflect off the solar panel as well as the bottom. It's really the bottom is really shiny of these. They would fit in your living room very easily, okay? And here's what they do. An amateur astronomer's taken a photograph of the Orion Nebula, which is not an easy thing to do, to get the stars from not moving and the nebula nice and crisp. And what astronomers do is they'll take like a 30-second exposure in maybe 10 of them. So they have 300-second exposure after they stack them, or 5-minute exposure, stacking them up together, the equivalent of a 5-minute long exposure. But these Starlink satellites and other satellites too can get across the image while you're taking a photo and ruin it. Well, there's software to eliminate that, of course. There's other ways around it, but still it's annoying when you're going to have a network of satellites built up all over the world. And this is an incredible story that I heard from an astronomical friend of mine, Steve Rissmiller. I'll tell you here in a moment about seeing these satellites with the aid of infrared binoculars. Here's what the Starlink satellites look like the next day or next couple nights. They're a train that is moving across the sky, and you're reminded of Santa's reindeer. You know, you want to hear ho, 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 and see Santa's sleigh behind him there. Really beautiful to see. I've seen them a couple times. It's, of course, this is when they're just 100 to 120 miles above the Earth's surface after they've been deployed. And so usually it's the next twilight, evening, and morning after they're launched. Then they start spreading out, and their thrusters put them up to about 400 miles high. Then you get some refreshment there. At 400 miles high, we don't see them. Or do we see them? Here's another evasion of, again, the famous Orion Nebula that if you've been doing a star party in December in a public science museum or astronomy club, you've seen the Orion Nebula. And imagine, you see this picture and oh my gosh, I had to set up my telescope and got just the right image and then it ruins it going through there. This is like a time exposure, so your shutter is open, so it's like finger painting right across your image there. Now, I put an owl in there because human beings can see, our eyesight is about 6th magnitude. I know you don't know what that means, but the moon is minus 14 magnitude. The brightest stars we see are about minus 1 or 2 magnitude. All right, the brighter stars you see are 1st magnitude. Magnitude is, difference between 1st magnitude and 2nd magnitude is 2.5 times. It's a logarithmic scale. So an owl can see, if we can see 6th magnitude is the faintest in like an Arizona desert, in your backyard you're going to see 3rd magnitude. An owl can see down to 8th magnitude. That's where they got those big eyes, and there's a lot more surface area. Their eyeballs are bigger than humans. So they can see things in the night sky that we can't. Now, Steve Rissmiller, astronomy buddy of mine, told me a little bit ago on the phone that he was at a star party where in a pretty dark skies, and people were passing around infrared binoculars. And no matter where you looked in the sky with these infrared binoculars, you could see satellites crisscrossing because the infrared binoculars get you down to about 8th magnitude. All right. It's a technical boost of intensity through these special binoculars that cost $300 to $400 to buy. So I made the comment, gee, an owl can see all these satellites going around that we can't see, and that's correct. So who about that, I guess? Hoot, hoot. Here's another image taken on a professional telescope up at Sierra Tololo in Peru, where, again, a professional image is being degraded, trying to study whatever part of physics that they are in space. And here's some of the Starlink satellites numbered from the International Space Station. You can see the little streak there. They look like stars. And these are above the space station, okay? But how exciting would that be to see them come overhead? Like I said, looking like Santa's reindeer crossing the sky. All right, well, that's the Starlinks there. We appreciate, like I said, Fox Orlando coming in because there's a national story about the Federal Communication Commission is looking at the regulating some of these Starlinks for astronomy purposes, and they have painted the bottoms of them, but in the very beginning, they never thought of asking the community that's just going to be affected by this. And this also is starting to get into a legal framework of mind about space, because nobody owns the original when it comes to the moon, stars, the Orion Nebula. You could do whatever you want with it, paint about it, make a poem, drawing, photo, whatever. No one owns the sky, all right? But does anybody own space and own this territory where we're putting thousands and thousands of satellites? No, but who's going to abide by any rules that are made? Who's going to enforce any rules that are made? There are some serious situations coming up where some of these satellites launched in the 1970s and 80s were actually put up in space by their last stage, usually the 2nd or 3rd stage of a rocket. Those stages also went into orbit, and some take 10 to 100 to 200 years to come down. And they're full of fuel. All right, there's fuel still in them, sloshing around some of these that have been up there for decades. What's going to happen when they burn up in the atmosphere, if they don't all burn up? So there's some startup companies looking at even having all kinds of things like nets and so forth. Now, you would be hard-pressed to be at the International Space Station and see another satellite nearby within miles of you. but we've got a 25,000-mile circumference, all right, and space from 100 miles to 22,000 miles up has satellites all over them. So something to think about. And we'll be keeping up on that and helping you stay curious. Well, here's our busy partner of the American Space Museum, Mark Usciak, and his brother Tom Usciak have photographed over 70 shuttle launches. Both have been professional photojournalists in the space industry. And there's Marky out there at the San Antonio, I think it was the Scobie Science Museum out there, named after Dick Scobie in San Antonio, his home. And Mark, we're glad that you got us the solar eclipse pictures. There's the crescent that many of us saw around the country, but you had to be in a certain area of the West, like Mark was, to get the ring of fire that Mark said when he took this picture of the ring of fire around the sun. And he's got a filter on it that makes it white and not orange. That Johnny Cash's song Ring of Fire was playing in the background there at this Texas campus. So that's very cool. Well, Mark went out there and also, like I said, I should have put in the Frank Rubio interview that he took pictures of, but we've got photos of that on our Facebook page. And then he shot some wings over Houston Air Show. Usciak loves those air shows. And then this is a photo he sent me last night when I started thinking about, oh, wow, this would be a good Stay Curious program. Mark, you're taking us behind the scenes at Starbase, okay? This is at Boca Chica, Texas, on the Gulf of Mexico. A mile, a walking distance from the Mexican border, where Elon Musk's factory for his Starship is well under construction and underway. Now, like I was saying, X posted today, Starship fully stacked while team prepares for a launch rehearsal. We continue to work with the FAA on a launch license, SpaceX wrote Monday, which in their post featured dazzling photos of the stacking activity. And Mark Usciak was on top of that. And here's a picture he took from a public viewing area that's 5 miles away. This was a daytime photo, and he thought this was the closest he was going to get to it with his time frame involved at the Isla Blanca Park. And he said that's a big camping facility, $12 to get in. Many people stayed there when they saw the Starship launch on April 20th. We'll show you some pictures of that from our good friend Mike Killian here in a minute. But he said there's a string of hotels about a mile further. The general public can go there. It's a nice spot for photos because you got a lot of things in the foreground like water and birds flying around. It's better in the afternoon than the morning, he said, for you photographers out there. But the unexpected treat, Mark said, was that he was close up. He went to Boca Chica Road, all right, which is a state highway, Route 4. You could take the mainland, you go over some causeways, and you are literally right there at the launch site. There is no credential needed, Mark said. Nothing. Just drive in your car, take pictures out the window, whatever you want. You're a couple hundred feet away from these rockets being built. One of them may go to the moon. Well, I doubt if that was being built because all these are going to crash and burn until Elon Musk gets it right. But look at these gorgeous photos from professional Mark Usciak there. Now, that is the big booster on the left that's got, 35 engines, 36 engines on it. And then you've got the Starship that's going to stack on top of it. And you got other Starships around the facility. It's really crazy to look at. And Mark said that he didn't think they were going to stack it until Dr. John Tilko. And I know Mr. Tilko, and he called up, he had learned that they were going to stack in the afternoon. They were stacking this monstrosity together. So Mark Usciak turned around, headed home to Pennsylvania, got down the road an hour or so, turned around to take some more pictures. We'll show you in a minute. Here is the dimensions you're looking at. The Apollo Saturn V rocket on the left, 350 feet tall, eclipsed by Starship and its big booster rocket. All right. Then you have the 222-foot tall SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket there. So gives you an idea of the scale. Here again, Mark did not expect, he was hoping to see that stacked up there with that crane. That's not a silhouette behind there. That's another Starship. All right, there's nothing to silhouette it. They've got them, some of them covered with tile. Now here's something I pulled off the website of SpaceX, them stacking these Starships. The black ones are special re-entry ones. Something that struck Mark's eye, by the way, before I tell you what struck Mark's eye, is what struck Mark's eye. This is the Artemis 3 situation going to the moon. All right, you've got the Orion spacecraft coming up to dock with the Lunar Gateway. That's only 2 or 3 cylinders big. It's more like a Russian Mir space station than our International Space Station in size. 3 or 4 people there, 4 to 6 maybe going up on the Uber, the Orion. And then there's the big Starship ready to take maybe 4 people to the surface of the moon. That is what the idea is as we speak. Here's some close-ups I took. These are not by Mark Usciak. These are some pictures I took off the web a while back showing you the heat tile and how these have to be covered with heat tile, much like the space shuttle for re-entry. And it's going to re-enter like horizontal, like a plane. There's a close-up of the hexagonal sections of the heat tile. But Mark said all that were out there were these big silver ones, and when he came back last night at 6 o'clock, they had stacked the Starship on top of the big friggin' rocket, the BFF. That's what they call it, folks. Now, notice they have put a little elevation launch stool there. They did not have that April 20th. And we're going to hear Mike Killian talk about how crazy that launch was and see some pictures of it. By the way, those farm silos in the back are tanks for the fuel. They look like farm silos of this farm boy. Beautiful picture there, Mark. And he's glad he turned around. He said he could go up as close as he wanted. You could walk up to this thing if you wanted. He didn't have time to do that. But there's no gates to stop you, no guards, no clearance needed. And believe me, people are going there in droves to watch the construction of this moonship. Now, what this photo is of construction going on at Pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center to build on the right a Starship launch pad. On the left is Pad 39A with a Falcon 9 on it. We're looking at the strong back, and you see the oval of the obviously it's a payload for satellites. And nearby, they're building a Starship base. But NASA is not going to let them launch from there until they make Pad 40, the other pad that SpaceX is leasing, till they make that suitable for crewed launches also, because that big friggin' rocket could take this whole pad out if it didn't get off the pad. So incredible. It's going out there. This picture's at least 6 months old. CB, go out there and get me a new one so I can have it to rack up next time we talk about the Starship at Kennedy Space Center. Well, here is a picture of silhouette of Mike Killian and the BFF and the Starship on top of it. I believe this would probably be April 19th. Mike, thank you for giving me permission to share your photos. Mike Killian, you see his name there at the bottom, is one of the premier aviation photographers on the planet. He all the time has cover pictures on the aviation magazines, and a great guy, and he's so active and busy all the time. Always come by and see me anytime here, Mike, and we'll put you on Stay Curious. We did do a program with him not too long ago. Well, Mike was out there for the launch, and here's what he said. Here's his collage of the launch and then the debris being flown off of it. Starship is a monster, Mike Killian said. Was the loudest and most chest-pounding launch I've ever heard. Almost hits like SRBs, solid rocket boosters. He was 3.5 miles away. Also surprised how long it took to get off the pad. Unfortunately, we had scattered low clouds from my view, only caught the liftoff before it was gone. He said, retrieving the cameras at the pad tomorrow. He wrote this April 20th. Don't expect much to be left. The place was obliterated and even left a crater. Video from the pad showed debris shattering cameras left and right. All right, which is awesome, but also expensive, Mike says. That rocket and pad were not ready, Mike says. There's not even a flame trench or sound suppression system I could see. Those sound waves are no joke. Place looks like a war zone, and there's a crater under the pad. So here is, look at that shot of a remote camera of Mike Killian's, probably at 500th of a second, and there's something twirling faster there to capture that. It looks like, God, it looks like an atomic bomb going off out in the desert like we've seen there. And then there's a camera that was left after the debris. The card was in it, unusable. The film card inside there. So thank you, Mike Killian, for letting me share that of you there. Marty, just a second. There is Mike Killian on the right, and Carlton Bailey, and a cleanly shaven Mark Usciak. You never know what his mug's going to look like, do you guys? But anyway, three amigos there, great photographers. They've done a lot of great things in their careers, and now they're helping the American Space Museum by sharing their photography with you. So as we look at Marky there, the man last night, what's the comment or question there, Marty?
You have a comment from Grossa AV, if I pronounced that right. He says the stool was there in April. The floor under the stool is what changed.
The what?
The stool was there in April.
Oh, okay.
The floor under the stool is what changed.
Okay, well, thank you. Didn't know that there was a rocket stool underneath there. They'd have to have something. But hopefully they build a trench and have a sound suppression system. That's just sort of everyday rocket technology. But that's Elon Musk. He's got the money to just let's go and do it. Thank you for adding that to our program there. On your comment and question. And what do you think, folks? Is this going to happen or not, Dave Stange? You think your little granddaughter's going to be on Mars there in a colony? Doug Forrest, he's already making sketches of what he thinks it would be like because he's an artist. Thank you for watching, Cynthia Rossi and Tom Usciak. Proud of your brother, I know. And Tommy, you're probably just as happy as me to stay at home and see your brother's pictures because he'll be wore out when he gets back to work. Tom Celentano, thank you for your contributions to our auction and other things you do to support us. Bill Whiting, see you in town, Marty, coming this.
He's due to come back Thursday.
All right, Bill. Well, we look forward to seeing you. Neil 1030, a faithful watcher, and thank you for your comment there. Gross A8V there, telling us that yes, they did have a type of stool underneath the BFF rocket April 20th when they launched it at Boca Chica. Crazy situation there, Mark Usciak says. You're so close to Mexico that you can walk across the border very easily from the Starbase site there. And also that there is, you have to show your driver's license and a car inspection at one of the overpasses, though you don't go into Mexican territory. So a lot of people covering that on YouTube. Ellie in Space, shout out to her because she's been on our show here. She's always updating things. But Marty, what do you think? I know neither one of us is going to live long enough to see this. You might, but I'm not. But it's quite Musk is kind of avoiding the moon and using it as a stepping stone to get to Mars. But there is so much logistics. And the one thing, I'm not being facetious, folks, or silly, but, you need food, and you're going to need a lot of toilet paper. Okay, so where are you going to get trees to make toilet paper on Mars? Anyway, we have to take a lot of things with us as humans, and of course, we are messy creatures. So there's a lot to think about, and think about, colds, diseases. Someone gets sick on one of those starships, everyone gets dysentery or something. This is the same thing that our pilgrims and other pioneers settling America and other places on the world. The first wave were really the true pioneers, and lots of them knew they weren't going to make it. So we'll see. But it is a fun time to be living and have communication satellites messing up your astrophotography, having billionaires wanting to go to Mars. Who'd have thunk it, So, well, Marty, thank you for a great Streamlabs job today. We again want to wish a happy birthday to Bill Anders and Dr. Mae Jameson and Jim Newman. And we'll have some more birthdays and more space news for you. But tomorrow it's going to be Mr. Jay Honeycutt. Let me get that image up there, those guys. Want to make sure Jay Honeycutt gets a lot of your love tomorrow. And Jelaine Spears, I know she's going to be awesome. She's been very tentative to come on the show, but she's finally going to do it. And then Nick Thomas Monday. He'll always have some great stories to tell. So look forward to all those guests on Stay Curious, and we look forward to you watching Stay Curious. So thanks again, and until tomorrow, I'm Mark Marquette saying we can't wait to see you in our museum to bridge the space between us. Thank you.